So, what is ethnic identity? It's the awareness of belonging to an ethnic group that shapes one's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Do you have ethnic identity? Yeah. Yes, you do. What is your ethnic identity? Anybody?
Spanish.
Like how?
Like I know what you mean. Like
Yeah.
How it shapes my thoughts, I guess. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, like I eat Spanish food, or most of my friends are Spanish. Like
Right.
we basically stick together. I never realized till I started hanging out with like other ethnic groups.
Yeah.
How Spanish I was and how my thoughts and feelings are different from everybody.
Yeah. Do you think you change your behaviors because you're not with people in this your ethnic group, or do you feel that they're seeing you differently?
Yeah, I guess kind of.
Okay, but do you change yourself when you're with other people? Probably not with your personality. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Not really. Kind of.
Yeah, because I don't change my personality no matter who is with me, but I think others see it in a different way. I'm more consistent. I don't really care about my ethnicity to begin with. This is who I am. But I think many people react to the different ethnicity without you are changing someone, because the way they see us is different, right? I feel that way more. Yes, Leslie.
Would changing ethnicity would also be, for example, like in the Spanish group we have, Puerto Rican, Central American.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
So
Excellent.
I see a lot, like, for example, I know one particular person, she's Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
And when we're around her family, she's full-blown Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
But when we're around Central Americans, all of a sudden she's a Central American.
Yeah.
But she is Puerto Rican. So
Right.
is that what you're referring to as well?
Yeah, yeah, that's that one too. Very good, very good. Because as I told you, this summer I was more involved in an Asian American Studies Initiative summer program, and then we got the grant. And I'm a Japanese immigrant, and then I have many similarities with those population, but at the same time, we don't lump Asians together, Asian Americans, because we have different variations like Korean American, Vietnamese Americans, Cambodian Americans, Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans. So it's different, but we tend to lump it together and just consider as Asians. And then that was the way that we tried to educate others that's not. We have some similarities, but then unique differences too. And then the most important part is to be open-minded and respect the differences. And then rather than just categorizing and using stereotypes that Asians are bad at driving, for instance, right? So, all right, good, guys. So a group with clear boundaries allows adolescents to distinguish it from other groups and result in strong ethnic identity. Interesting thing is that my son, he just started the 3rd grade, and then his new best friend in his classroom is Adish. He's an Indian and American immigrant. They are in a different state before they came, and then I think his parents immigrated from India, but then I think he was born and raised in the United States. But my son feels, it was interesting because you know how I am, so I try to be a person that our kids want to be. But then they have some culture heritage because I'm Japanese too. But at the same time, my son doesn't look like Japanese at all because he looks like my husband, my husband. But it was interesting to see that he related him with a dish who has different cultural background, and then kind of like immigrant, parents are immigrant, but then Indian Americans. And I like the fact that he was very close to the new friend. And then, but I don't think he really distinguished one from the other because I see him playing with other kids, and it doesn't mean that he just play with Adish but the other kids. But then what I see is that really ethnicity is not really a factor for him. If someone is nice, and then he likes it, and then he plays with that person. So instead of ethnicity or gender, his approach is if someone is nice to me, I'm nice to him or her, and then they play together. So anyway, but as you know from the text too, and then your observations, what you have learned before, some adolescents, they don't know how to define themselves. They don't know who they are. So sometimes if they clearly sees that they belong to a certain group and that it can be ethnicity or ethnic groups, then they can basically develop some healthy identity too, because they have some belonging to the group that they can relate to. Make sense to you? Okay, very good. So boundaries may be internal to the group or external. Like some kids like to be exclusive. Like, I'm popular kid, I'm with this group. And then some people don't feel that way. They just have internally feel more comfortable with certain groups. And there can be a certain ethnic groups and then certain groups in general, right? But then today's lecture is about ethnic groups and then identity issues and then intimacy too. So, all right. All right, then next. Acculturation is the process by which members of a minority adopt customs of a dominant group while maintaining a separate cultural identity. Okay? Adolescents' behaviors may be more like the dominant culture, yet values may remain unchanged as they are central to belonging to their ethnic group. And adolescents can be basically helping adults too. If the immigrants just came and then adolescents have more way of speaking English and their own dominant cultural language, and the parents may not be able to speak English, and they tend to help them too, right? Okay, so there are some stages of ethnic identity development too. Unexamined ethnic identity, initial lack of awareness of one's ethnicity, and then simple internalization of the dominant culture. Okay? Then ethnic identity search, intermediate stage involving exploration of one's ethnicity. Then achieved ethnic identity, a stage in which one has a clear sense of one's ethnicity, reflecting feelings of belonging and emotional identification. So it's just different stages, and each person is different. You might feel more positive identification with ethnic background. Some people may not want to identify themselves strongly with their own ethnic background. So it depends, again. So we have a percentage of minority adolescents in stages of ethnic identity formation. So most of them are unexamined. Okay? Then search and achieved. But it was studied in 80s, like late 80s. It can be very different. Okay? So bicultural identity. The process minority adolescents use to identify themselves when they belong to two cultures, like my kids. Most minority adolescents consider themselves bicultural, but they use different ways of integrating cultures too. It's so funny, my youngest is 5 years old, and Mrs. Finnis from the kindergarten program sent the survey for each parent, okay, household, asking some questions so she can understand the kids better, know the kids better. So I asked her questions. How old is she? She said 5. How many members in the family? 5. How many brothers and sisters? 1 each, like that. And what's your favorite food? Japanese. And I'm like, oh, great. So it's interesting. Like she sees herself as like different, but then she loves Japan because I have positive Japanese ethnic identity, but interesting. Okay, so some consider themselves members equally of the ethnic group and of the wider culture. Like my kids don't really distinguish two different cultures. They're more like integrated. And they resolve issues by combining elements of both or by de-emphasizing differences. How many of you are biracial here, by the way? Do you see yourself integrating the different cultures that you have, or?
Definitely,
Yeah.
I mean, growing up, I had a lot of Hispanic friends, but I love rock and you know, the music that was here in the West.
Yeah.
70s, 80s, 90s
Yeah.
punk rock. And
Yeah.
I grew up just loving it, and they were like, "Oh my God, like you were born in the wrong era," or stuff like that. Like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, you're Hispanic, and not supposed to be liking that stuff. I was like, I love it, but
Yeah.
it's just I love being Hispanic and I love music. You know,
Yeah.
I came from here.
Right.
But
And then why you have to, like, you are kind of told that in the wrong, era. That's not the issue. It shouldn't be an issue to begin with, right? And it's how you are. That's how you integrated different cultures, and then you're healthy. That's the most important part, right? That's so interesting. Why did some people have to categorize us in certain ways? But then many of us are not like that at all. Like it's nice to be different and being unique, and then nothing is wrong with that, especially this
Isn't it
environment.
kind of a personal reflection of,
Yeah.
of their identity
Yeah.
in a sense? If they
Yeah.
were all kind of Spanish and
Mhm.
Hispanic, and that,
Yeah.
that was their perception
Yeah.
of how he should,
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, good, very good. Exactly. That's how I was saying that I see your open personality. I don't think you change no matter which group you're going to be in, but others might see you in a different way, like you just explained.
Yeah, like when I'm with my wife, I'm sorry, when I'm with my white friends, I'm me. I'm the inner city Spanish kid, and I love me. Like, I'm
Yeah.
different from them. I'm the one with the flow.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
like foreign and shit.
Yeah. I mean,
And they kind of,
yeah,
kind of like the cool kid of the group. I like being that.
right.
Aside when I'm with all my Spanish friends, I'm just like the rest of them. So.
See, I really think the way you see yourself should be fine, and then why others judge us based on, ethnicity or, and then they try to change the way they treat us based on who we are. I just, I have a hard time understanding. It's personality difference, not culture is part of it because that's how we are raised and what we share some customs and values, but it's just a part of it, and then because of the way we are, shouldn't be because judged by the ethnicity or ethnic background or group. So, all right, good guys, good. Okay. So those who regard ethnicity as more central may feel differently depending on where they are or who they are with. All right? They may feel more American at school and then more ethnic at home. That's true with biracial children because they try to use their native language at home, but then when they go to school, they use English and stuff. So this situational identity may result in feeling less American, whereas those whose identities are equal see themselves as fitting in to a diverse U.S. culture. I love that diverse U.S. culture because we are diverse to begin with. We're all immigrants to come to this country, right? Then of course, but things happen to Native Americans here. That's really sad, and it's really. It shouldn't be the way it has happened, but that's part of the history. But it's true, U.S. is a melting pot. It's just a different cultural background to begin with. So racial identity is different from cultural identity, and racial distinctions are based on differences in physical appearances. Okay? So adolescents' construction of a racial identity reflects the membership within a group and also the awareness of their appearance and of others' response too. Okay? Physical appearance. That's the easiest way for the kids to understand, right? They see it. It's not based on their stereotypical ideas, not yet. but because purely they look different, so they might identify people in a different way. Like remember when kids are at a younger age, they like conservation. Remember, we have 2 glasses of milk, but the one is taller, one is the shorter and then bigger, wider. They think the taller one has more milk than the other. The same concept. They can't really comprehend the deep meanings of differences because they just see it and they think it's different. Their cognitive level is not high enough yet that they have to kind of see the difference based on the shape or the height or something like that, or color, okay? That those are the easier ones to identify. So, racial identity is fluid for many adolescents, reflecting differences in both internal and external constraints. Adolescents may describe themselves differently when at home or at school too. Many biracial individuals continue to develop their racial identity into adulthood. All right, it's a continuous journey for them. All right, so there is a percentage change in racial identity from adolescence to early adulthood for single race and biracial individuals too. So the numbers are getting increased with biracial than just one race identity, okay? All right, then individualistic cultures encourage a sense of self as independent, self-sufficient, and autonomous. We talked about it, right? Being independent, personal, goal-oriented, whereas collectivistic cultures encourage a sense of self in terms of one's roles or statuses related to others, group-oriented, okay? Agency, asserting one's thoughts or feelings through one's actions. In independent cultures, agency is expressed by asserting one's thoughts and feelings, but in interdependent cultures, agency is expressed by self-restraint and by maintaining harmonious relationships. Again, personal goals, assertiveness, independence versus group orientation here. All right? All right. I like this one, the comparison of the independent and interdependent sense of self. So, definition is, for independent, separate from social context. Interdependent is opposite, connected with social context. All right? And then the other one is, the one I want to put is the task, or tasks. Being independent meaning being unique, express self, realize internal attributes, promote own goals, be direct, say what's on your mind. On the other hand, interdependent self, belonging, fitting in, occupying one's proper place, engaging in appropriate action, promoting others' goals, be indirect, read others' mind. What a contrast, isn't it? Okay. And role of others too. For independent, self-evaluation, others important for social comparison, reflected appraisal. On the other hand, self-definition for interdependent, relationships with others in specific context define the self. Okay. So basis of self-esteem, how they feel about themselves, is related to ability to express self, validate internal attributes for independent. Okay, and then ability to adjust, restrain self, maintain harmony with social context for interdependent, because group-oriented. All right. So self-concept, the individual's awareness of the self as a person, a theory about the self that explains personal experiences. So adolescents' beliefs determine many of their emotional reactions. Yet many beliefs are new and lack experiential support. They don't know who they are yet, so they feel very insecure. And if other people say something to you, you feel emotional. You react to others saying, because you don't know who you are yet. You're not established as who you are. So you're more vulnerable to feel emotional and then reactive. That's definitely related to it's a new experience and you don't have experiences to support yourself yet. All right? Makes sense. They spend much time and effort gathering evidence to support their theories of self. Like even I was doing that with Leslie. Okay, Leslie takes Nicole too, you take my research method class, and then you can tell I'm the same way as I am as a professor to teach any class, but because of the content of the class and also different types of students I have to adjust some, but I try it out each way so I see the best of each class. What approach can I take? And I get some feedback from you, and at the same I try to gather information from my students. How can I make it as a best approach for my students' understandings, right, or learning, okay? I do that as a middle-aged woman. But adolescents, they are still developing as who they are. I know who I am better than when I was an adolescent. But still, I try to find it as a professional, what approach is the best for my students' learning. So, continuous again. All right. Self-esteem. The individual's overall positive or negative evaluation of the self. So the foundations for self-esteem include relationship with parents. That's the big thing because they are the closest adults you had when you're growing up, or you still have interactions with peers, your friends, satisfaction with one's body too. That's big for women, men too, but more so for women because society sees that. How many of you have read the recent article on New York Times? My professor at BU, she sent me a link that female or male bosses over their workers, if they're the female workers, they tend to criticize their personal traits more than the male counterparts. We as professionals are judged based on personal traits rather than the performance itself. Coming with this one too. In the business world, not here at Bunker Hill. I'm lucky because my colleagues are educated and they know I will speak out if I'm not treated right. And this is the environment we can do it. You know, we exchange the information, opinions, and then try to be politically correct and also try to be equal. It's interesting because usually what I feel is, although I'm not the way people see and I don't change the way I am, but I sense that many people judge me based on who I am because I'm Japanese and I'm female to begin with. And it's interesting because some students and the colleagues, not the majority of them, my majority of my students and colleagues are fantastic. I have been here for 9 years now, teaching at this college. I love it. But I noticed that some people judge my performance as a professor, attacking my personal traits. She is cold-blooded. She's narcissistic. She's too fast to teach. But none of them is related to how I teach my students. But they're attacking my personal traits. And believe me, I'm not narcissistic. If I am, I wouldn't teach here. Right? You're psych students, you understand that. But it's interesting, some people see me as narcissistic, meaning I love myself, I always talk about myself. I'm the center of attention. Am I? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so, but some students commented at ratemyprofessors.com saying I'm a narcissistic. And I'm like, meaning like I'm like soap opera, character that narcissistic, that I always try to get men's attention, and then I should be the one that beautiful, and then look at me. Interesting, but that's the societal role. No matter woman of power too. Like Hillary Rodham Clinton, I want her to be a first president of female president of the United States. But many men don't like that because she has a power, and then what do they say about her is distant. But she is much more efficient than many politicians maybe. So ability-wise, she's there, but people criticize her based on her, again, personality traits. Because woman's self-esteem is affected by body image, personality traits. But men don't get negative comments on their personal appearance or personality traits. Yeah, sometimes, that's true. But in general, right, like politicians or professors, like professions, like business world, right? Okay, good. So we have global self-esteem. It's related to peers, school, family, body image, sports, athletics. The big size, the circle is body image. Peers too, right? It's self-esteem. It's how you feel about yourself. All right. So ethnicity affects self-esteem. Black adolescents have the highest self-esteem of all groups, likely due to a positive racial identity. This is even greater in females than in males. I like that. Anything positive is good. If they can identify with racial identity, that will bring positive outcomes. Why not? Those adolescents with a strong sense of ethnicity and of belonging to the larger culture have higher self-esteem too. Having higher esteem is a good thing no matter what, right? Definitely. So ethnicity affects self-esteem in a good way, positive way, wonderful. Negative, I don't like that. It shouldn't be the way, always positive. Gender also affects self-esteem. Self-esteem tends to be higher in males, and this difference increases dramatically with age during high school. Females are more likely to give negative evaluations of their characteristics that they consider important. Male self-esteem may be more resilient to changes such as puberty or a new school too. New environment, everybody feels anxious about it. Changes always bring some anxiety, right? But now I feel like I know why I'm kind of told by some students that I'm narcissistic, because I like myself. I have so high self-esteem. So maybe they see it as narcissistic, right? Although it's just different. I'm not narcissistic, but I know who I am. I like the way I am. I'm happy with myself. But some people see it as narcissistic then. I think that's what it is. Interesting. I just self-analyzed it. Thank you, guys. All right. I just couldn't get it. But anyway. Then, intimacy, related to self-esteem too. Sharing oneself with another, characterized by self-disclosure and mutuality. So adolescents need to be in touch with their own feelings in order to develop intimate relationships with others. So self-acceptance is important. Adolescents who like themselves and who are self-aware are free to be themselves without distortion. But till that point, they have to have some figuring out who they are, right? Okay. Intimacy with others develops with self-disclosure, all right? So adolescents learn to trust others with personal aspects of themselves, and this must be mutual to be comfortable. So this type of trust takes time to develop, and adolescents may work up gradually to the level required for committed relationship. Okay. So there are differences to time-wise too. So Erickson believed that identity is a necessary precursor to intimacy. I agree, because if you don't know who you are, then how can you be comfortable revealing yourself to others and develop serious relationships, right? So others say that it is different in females. Their development will include an interpersonal track in which they develop increasingly complex interpersonal skills. Development in males prepares them to define themselves impersonally through skills resulting in products. So what does it mean, guys? Interpersonal skills track, then this one is resulting in products.
Kind of gender expectation?
Exactly right. Males should be financially stable and provide food, right, house, and then women were expected to stay home and raise children, right? House chores, right? Okay, that's related to gender role expectation. Excellent. So for females, intimacy and relationships are a process by which they define themselves. They achieve self-identity through intimacy and relationships, and these continue to contribute heavily through early adulthood. And because of this developmental significance, there are gender differences in adolescence levels of intimacy. It's related to sexual orientation and also sexual identity too, and also cultural background too, right? So it's multi-layered actually. But there is, yes, tendency that women in general, because of the gender role expectations, we were focused on intimacy in relationship, but then it's more like interpersonal skills, relations with others. Right? Okay. So, intimacy statuses in late adolescence. Okay? We have isolate, stereotype, pseudo-intimate, pseudo-stupidity, pseudo-intimate, and then pre-intimate and intimate. So relationships consist only of casual acquaintances for isolate stage. Then stereotyped stage, relationships are shallow and conventional, very superficial. Do you see this? Have you seen the commercial before? Like boys only except mom, like that. Putting the sign. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's the stage stereotyped. Only boys are allowed except mom. Okay, no girls, and girls have say no boys. It's only for girls to play with dolls, and then they have those stereotyped relationships. The pseudo-intimate relationships are similar to those of stereotyped but have commitment to long-term sexual relationship. These defined through conventional roles rather than self-disclosure. So pseudo is not true intimate relationships. Okay? Pre-intimate close open relationships characterized by mutuality, ambivalence regarding commitment to long-term sexual relationship. Then intimate, okay, relationships are similar to those of pre-intimate but also have commitment to long-term sexual relationship. All right. So they have one partner to spend time for a long time, okay, at the intimate level. So research on the relationship of identity and intimacy has different interpretations which challenge developmental theory. So some uphold Erickson's idea that identity must happen first. Others agree, but state that it is more typical of males. This agrees with other studies indicating that for females, intimacy is a means towards achievement of identity. I see that, but I can't agree with that. Some women have their identity first, then develop intimate relationships too. I really think, again, it's individual differences, not the gender differences. Some men too, right? It's not like a clear-cut answer, like, yes, males develop identity first, then intimacy, and the women tend to do intimacy, then try to develop identity. No. There is a tendency we see for certain people, but not everybody. So adolescent development requires modifications to relationships with parents, no ends to those relationships through renegotiations, not the negotiations, renegotiations. Adolescents can separate as persons yet remain attached. This is in contrast to the theory that emphasizes separation as developmentally more advanced. That's the balance issue again, too. When they're young, they need close guidance that the intimacy between parents and children, or parent and children. Then when they get older, they have to develop themselves, so they have to have some balance between not enmeshed with family members, but being independent, but also have some connections with them. It's like a safety blanket. They have to have parents or close adults to feel safe, but at the same time, they cannot be like attached to them forever, right? So it's a balance issue. Yes?
What does it mean by renegotiations?
They try to negotiate with parents, right, when they grow up. Didn't we all do that? But then, depending on the parenting style, if the parents are authoritative, they try to give guidance and also give them room to renegotiate back with us. Make sense? So renegotiation is like, we try to negotiate with the parents first, but then parents give us some opinions or directions. Then after sucking those information in, then we approach to the parents to renegotiate something. Then we come with like a mutual ground or agreement. Make sense to you? Yeah. It's not only like one way that we negotiate and that's it. We kind of take turns, renegotiate, and then remember when we were young, we went through this, but then some adolescents never understand until they hit the late adolescence, and then they say, Mom, you're right. Okay? But then when they're going through that stage, they might say, remember personal favor, no one understands how I feel right now. And then after a certain stage, then they say, actually, I think my parents had been there before, but I didn't see that. Then they realize how they are, and then come back for more negotiations too, okay? So a second challenge to progressive separation and individuation occurs in following female development. Females have different identity concerns than the proposed issues which reflect a male bias. That's true too though. Males have biases towards women, females. Autonomy may serve males well as an organizer, but relationships do this for females. So women tend to, when we have leadership skills, we will be called bossy. She's bossy. But do we use bossy to a man? Usually not, right? Okay. Relationship describes the many ways we have of interrelating. So Joselson describes 8 dimensions of relatedness, and each follows a developmental course initially expressed as concrete and literal, and in time symbolically. Absence or excess of each form is unhealthy. So I'll show you more. Okay, so falling, okay. Holding gives a sense of being contained and bounded, provides sense of security, later takes the form of feeling supported by others, of having others who are there for us. Then aloneness, loss, attachment, the need to be close to those who are important to us, which the infant expresses by crying in protest when its mother leaves, an essential ingredient of human connection. Then inhibition, emotional dating, okay? Passionate experience, others become the object of our desires, ranges from the need to suck in infancy to sexual desire in adolescence and adulthood. Annihilation, rejection, eye to eye validation lets us see ourselves through the eyes of others and gives us a sense of ourselves in relation to them. So it's a different like dimensions that she's talking about. And then another one too. This illusionment, purposelessness, idealization, and identification, expansion of oneself ourself by reaching out to and embracing those who are bigger, stronger, and grander. Okay. Then loneliness, mutuality, and resonance. By sharing our experiences with another, we arrive at something jointly created, an expression of our social nature. Then alienation, embeddedness, a sense of belonging, having a place in the group, experiencing communality. Then indifference, tending and care, nurturance that is intentional and then deliberate. Our capacity to care for others reflects our own need to be needed. I see different theories like Erik Erikson's and then Chodorow and then what was the other one, guys? From chapter 1, chapters 1 and 2. There is a female theorist that cares for ourselves, cares for others, and balancing both. What was, not the Chodorow. She is at Columbia. She used to be at Harvard. What was her name, guys? The tip of the tongue. That's all right. I forgot her name. I can see her face in my head, but I don't have her name. Not the Chodorow, the other one. I love her theory, but I see that here too. That's okay. We'll come back to me, guys. No, it's the care for oneself and care for others, and then the combination of both for the third stage. What's her name? She's at Columbia right now. Anyway. Thank you. You got it. So that theorist has different dimensions based on different theorists. I see that. So she's right that this is like, it has to be a balanced act with all different dimensions to be healthy. It can't be just one is achieved, one is not, or something like that. So gender differences in relatedness exist, but with great variability, absolutely, among same-sex individuals too. So females describe greater complexity while males approach relationships more straightforwardly. Yeah, that's a general, in general, all right? Because to me, all right, I don't mind sharing my personal experiences if you can bear with me. I'm more straightforward than my husband. I think my husband is more, well, because of his profession, he's a psychiatrist. So he's more emotionally in tuned. Me, more logical and straightforward. Boom, boom, boom. In a good way, I don't have any, the way you see it is the way I am. But my husband, because of his profession as a psychiatrist, he tried to see emotional, like development, more complex picture of each person. So I'm basically opposite here with my husband too. So it's interesting. They have a general tendency. Yeah, I see that in general, but it's not always the case. And females see relationships as evolving over time, while males see them as static. It's interesting too. We evolve as we age, but that any relationship should be that way. And you see nice pictures of elderly couple. They have been married for 55 years. They're still like holding their hands. They evolve together as a couple, right? So both Sexes emphasize different dimensions of relatedness. Joselson points to underlying differences in the concept of relationships, in how each does or does not separate from the mother, and in how one gains a sense of self through doing versus being. Doers and then, right, like actions, thought processes, doing versus being, all right? Any comments? Am I going too fast or it's okay?
It's okay.
All right. So Joss also asserts that gender differences require redefinition of identity to include self in relationship to others. Presently, separation is said to contribute to maturity, involving movement toward relationships. Another view is that autonomy and separateness are bad components of the self in relationship. Again, different opinions, different theories, right? And everybody's experiences can be different. So variations again. So that was chapter 5.